So, like I said in my previous Red Heart videos, I want to make a blanket, a granny square blanket out of them. Anyway, so I want to make a granny square blanket out of them using blues and greens with white borders. So I have the yarn, I've started making the squares. So let's do what we found so far. So what yarn are we using? Obviously it's all Red Heart Granny Square. We're using the colors Soft Sky, Cream, you can get at Joann's, White Frigid, you can get at Joann's, Lily Pad, you can't get this at Joann's, Shadow, you can get this at Joann's, and Amethyst, I'm pretty sure. Yep, Amethyst. You can get this at Joann's. So, these are the colors, but I want you to notice something, that some of these are not white. I didn't notice that when I bought them. So, on the label, it will either say Aran, or it'll say soft white. I didn't know that. So some of these have a white border, such as this. This is Shadow, right? Some of these have a cream border. This is Lily Pad. And Lily Pad, I have to say, is my favorite, for sure. So these are a cream border. So I don't know what I'm gonna do now. I've thought about making it like a gradient from white to cream or cream to white. And I've also thought about just making a full pattern out of it instead of just doing like randomized granny squares, doing like a full pattern of like maybe doing diamonds. I don't know. I haven't figured that far out because I'm trying to get them made up. So what have I done? So I only have one blocking thing, so we're going kind of slowly, but it's okay because it takes a lot to make all of these. One skein gives you 15 squares. It says 14 on the label. If you don't fuck up, you get 15, and then some extra, right? We'll talk about that in a second. But so this is me blocking them. So I have the cream done. This is the rest of the cream of one skein. I have a skein of Amethyst. I have a skein of Shadow. And I'm currently working on, well, I've done this skein, but I'm working on blocking White Frigid. And now I'm starting to work up a skein of Lily Pad. And that will give me my 6 squares, my 6 colors, I should say. I have 2 skeins of each color because originally I was going to do 12 by 12 like grid for the blanket, which is 144 squares. And the 5 skeins give me, I think, 100, yeah, they give me 150. Now, I don't know if I want to make it a little bit more rectangular because I wasn't originally going to have cream. I added cream because I do like it, and it gives me another one that has the Aran color on the outside instead of the white. So now I have many more squares than I need with 2 of each. So I'm going to figure out what I'm going to do. And I also have 2 extra skeins of White Frigid because I ordered White Frigid from Joann's. Then they canceled my order. So then I waited, they restocked it, I reordered it. The order took 5 years to get here, like probably a month to get here. I don't know why. And I think it was on FedEx's end because Joann's uses FedEx, and like they shipped it pretty fast. But then FedEx was like, we don't know where the fuck it is. And then they were like, it's in Indiana. And that was in Indiana for like 2 solid days, and then it was supposed to be delivered, then it wasn't, then it was delivered the next day. Anyway, in that month of waiting, I bought 2 more Skeins because they got in stock at the Joann store before it got to me. So now I have 4 Skeins of white frigid. I don't need 4 Skeins. So what I'm thinking is I'm gonna make a top. I don't know, we'll see. But, so this is my progress. It's just stacks on stacks of granny squares. But here's another thing I wanted to talk about. So there have been debate about whether all of these Skeins are the same size. And I can assure you that they are not. To the point, I started taking notes on each skein. So this is all of the skeins that I've used. These aren't just the colors for the blanket because I have used other colors. So we're just gonna go through them, and I'm gonna throw up a picture so that you can see which color I'm talking about and what I found. So skeins that you can use a 5mm hook with. Now remember, it's recommended to use a 5.5. I had to use a 5 because the 5.5 was just, it was too big, at least for my tension. Skeins you can use a 5mm hook with. Hot Stuff, Amethyst, which is this bad boy, and Lily Pad, which is this bad boy, okay? Skeins that you use what's the word? Recommended. Skeins you use the recommended hook size for, at least I have. Shadow, this one. Pink Punch, Frigid, this one. Soft Sky, which is this one, Soft Sky. Moody Cherry, and Carnation Code. Now, there's one I left out. That's this one. This is Aaron Cream. Now, this one gave me some difficulties. For this one, to make a square correct, I have to use a 4mm to start it. For this tan, brown, beige color in the middle, I have to use a 4mm hook, because if you measure the length of that color in the skein, it is significantly smaller than other skeins. Significantly smaller. So I have to use a 4mm to do the center, and then I use a 5mm to do the rest. Though I do think, because there seems to be excess of the rest for whatever fucking reason, that you might be able to use a 5.5 with tight tension. So I don't know what the fuck is going on with this skein. I don't know. But there's another skein that I haven't used yet. That's like the pink and orange and white one. I forget what it's called. I'll put it up here. That I've seen on TikTok where people are saying that it doesn't have enough of the center color either. I haven't gotten there yet, but I am taking notes so I can see how inconsistent this fucking yarn is. Because here's the other thing. Let me get an example. This is my yarn bucket. Well, this is my yarn scraps that aren't just like little slivers bucket. Yes, it is a McDonald's Halloween bucket, mind your business. Anyway, so normally at the end of any of these skeins, I'll get a ball about this size of leftover yarn. And this is me just like rolling up the excess because it's too small to like cake. You know what I mean? So I have a bunch of these like little balls that are great little just yarn scraps of stuff that I'll use for something. I don't know, maybe a border on something. But I've been keeping all the balls because, you know, they're good yarn scraps. Now, I've gotten a ball. I've gotten that size ball for every single skein I've tried. Every single one except White Frigid. White Frigid had a sliver of yarn left. Now, it still made 15 squares. I'm not mad. And it works with a 5.5 hook, so it is correct. But my thing is, there's less yarn in the skein because all the other yarns, all the other skeins, I can make a 5.5. I could use a 5.5, and I have this little ball of yarn left over. This one had a sliver of yarn left over. So why is this one cut shorter? I don't know. It is. It doesn't affect it. I'm just saying we're noting the differences of the fact that these are not dyed all the same and these are not cut the same either. Like the amount of yarn you get in this skein is inconsistent completely. And I don't know what's up with that because theoretically it all should be exactly the same. But that's just some thoughts that I've had. So far the yarn's been working out great. It just takes time to, you know, make hundreds of granny squares. So that is my current where I'm at on this blanket. It's gonna take me a long time to do this blanket, but we're making steady progress and I am enjoying myself because I do really like working with this yarn. So I will see you guys at the next update whenever I choose to do that. I finally have all the squares done. This is them. This is 12 skeins of the Red Heart Granny Square yarn. So this is 179 squares. Because one skein only gave me 14 because it was fucked up. But thank God I only need 28 of each color. So I have 2 stacks of each color. So we'll be fine. But I finally have them all done. So now I'm gonna lay them all out. I went on Stitch Fiddle and I decided a layout, and that's this layout. So I'm gonna zoom out, set you guys up so that you can see me. And I'm gonna lay them all out on the floor and then pick them back up in the rows so that I can start sewing them together to have this blanket done. This is taking so long. Okay, but on the home stretch, so. Hi. So I am in the process of combining sewing the squares together for the blanket, and I figured I would get questions on how I did it. So I'm just going to show you and get ahead of that. So I'm going to show you the 2 different, well, it's the same way, but it's 2 different scenarios for where I'm combining. So I guess this is kind of a tutorial. Okay, so what you need to attach these granny squares is you need a yarn needle. I think you can also use a tapestry needle. I just don't have one of those. I think that's the one where it like has a curve at the end. I need to get one of those because that would actually be nice. But a yarn needle, scissors, and yarn. The yarn in the skein does not work as far as like you don't have leftover yarn really to like attach them with. You could technically join as you go. They're already 6-inch squares though, so I was like, I don't need to make them 7 rounds and like join as you go. I'm also just not the biggest fan of join as you go, just personally.
So we're sewing them. I do know you can crochet them. I don't like that when you crochet them, it makes a ridge. It's not like flat across. So that's why we're sewing. Also, it's quicker to sew them. Maybe for some people it's not, but at least for me, it's quicker to sew. So we're sewing. So to sew them together in preparation for this, I got red heart and just white. And this is what I'm using. Now, again, like we talked about earlier, some of these squares have white, some of these squares have Aran, which is like this cream. I'm just ignoring that. We're just using white, you know? I'm not going to try to color match it that hard because you don't really see the seams, like what color you use on the seams. You really don't see it like very much. And then I am going to use this as a border, and then as a border, it's fine. It's fine. Don't worry about that. Okay. But I got red heart and white. I wanted to use the same type of yarn just because I've had problems with like if I use a different type of yarn to like put them together or something, it'll be like a different thickness, or like one will be more scratchy and one will be more smooth and it just won't fit together correctly. So I always try to get the same brand and the same type of yarn to sew my squares together, or really to sew any of my projects together. Just a tip. Okay, so to sew, you're going to treat this like needle and thread. It's just a thick needle and thick thread. So I get like a good, I don't know, a few feet of yarn to start with, and just cut it. And then what I'm going to do, so this is the bottom right corner piece of my blanket. I've already done, I was gonna start, not bottom right, this is the bottom left. I started the bottom right and I'm about to show you that, but it's already been started. So I'm gonna tell you how to start it using bottom left, and I'm gonna show you how to continue it using bottom right, okay? So we're starting on the bottom left here. So this is the bottom left square. And then I have also picked up the square that goes on top of it, like this, okay? And now we're not joining these like this because I'm not doing horizontal yet. I'm doing vertical first. You can do either first. You can do it horizontal or vertical. Just my brain wanted me to do vertical first. Okay, so this goes on top because you need both of these to start making it. And then I have the adjacent squares where they're like this, right? The ones that go side by side, because we're doing side by side to go vertically up. And then I'm going to come back and we're going to do horizontal to go across, okay? So I have the first two of each row because that's what I need for the demonstration. Also remember, keep a picture. Like I have the stitch fiddle picture of how I want all my squares to be laid out. And then I also took pictures of the squares laid out on my floor. Take pictures, because these shits will get turned around, they'll get in the wrong order, you'll mess up. Have a reference, take pictures. Okay, so now what are we doing? So you're gonna take the first square, first corner, and the square to its right, square directly beside it, which is these two. Now you want to put, this is the right side, this is the wrong side, or the front and the back. So I'm going to put them together, right? We're going to do back sides together, right sides facing out, okay? And then what I do is I spin my squares so that the extra little piece where they end is always in the same corner. I do this. Now, first of all, we're going to weave in our ends later, because the sewing method is not a good method if you're trying to hide your ends. You need to weave those in separately. I've tried because I'm lazy. I've tried. It doesn't cover them. I don't like it. We're going to let these hang, but here's what we're going to do first. I'm going to take these two strands. I'm going to tie them together. Tie them up, okay? So I just do a double knot whenever I tie stuff together. I know there's some people who are very against putting knots in their pieces. Y'all do you. You do whatever you want. Do what makes you happy. I do tight knots, okay? I believe knots are better for keeping shit together, not letting shit fall apart. If you don't want to do knots, you don't have to. You can skip this step. This is what I do. Okay, so we have it in a tight knot. So now these two are together and they're on the right corner. So that helps where if I like set this down to go get food or something, I come back, oh, it's this corner that's supposed to be together, right? Okay, so now the two extra squares that we picked up, we're gonna set aside for the moment, just for the moment. We're gonna set them aside. And now, pick back up your string of yarn. What I would normally do, but I forgot to bring one in at the moment, is, what I normally do is I take a crochet hook and I use it to thread them into the hole, this corner hole that you get on each side. I'll thread it through. But I forgot to bring a crochet hook into this room and I am not about to go get one. So here's the other way that we're gonna do it, where you don't need a crochet hook at all. Okay, so get the needle on your thread. Now just feed the needle through the opening. Now I'm gonna separate them and I'm gonna look specifically for, this is the opening on the back, put the needle through, and then the other opening, put the needle through. So now I'm gonna pull it all the way through and just leave a little bit of a tail. So I pull it all the way through, I left a little bit of a tail, okay? Then I'm gonna tie another knot, another double knot. Single knots will come undone, do a double knot. Okay, so now you have 3 strands. We're gonna worry about these later. What we gotta do is we're gonna start actually sewing it together, right? You have this long string. The long string is because you're trying to make it as continuous of a strand all the way up the row as you can. You can cut a string that is as long as you need it for the row. I don't, because then that's a lot of yanking extra yarn through, right? I just, whenever this gets low, whenever this gets like too short to work with, I just cut another string and tie it on and just continue like you would normally if you ran out of yarn. Just because, I mean, this is already a long string that I'm gonna have to pull through every single stitch. But you can do the whole thing. You can measure it out, get as much as you want. I have a whole skein. I'm not gonna run out. I'm fine. Okay. So now I'm gonna spin this towards you so that you can see. I'm gonna spin it back so I can actually do it. These theoretically should have the same number of stitches on top and on the edge of every single row. Obviously, with this yarn, that's not necessarily true, because for some colors, you have to put in extra stitches to make it work, or you have to take away stitches to make it work, because none of these skeins add up or make sense. But it's okay. We can get through this together, okay? So what I'm gonna do is all these clusters, I want them to line up on the front and the back, because basically that's what's important, is that the clusters line up. You're not gonna see your individual stitches from sewing the way I'm about to show you. It's mainly just you want the clusters to line up. Now, if you see this finished blanket and not every single individual cluster lines up on those 170 freaking squares, mind your business. It's a lot of squares, but this is what we're trying to do, okay? So I'm gonna be doing, I believe it's called a mattress stitch. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe it's called a mattress stitch. And I'm gonna be doing it only in the back loops of the stitches, so that when you fold these flat, you don't see the stitches. And it doesn't make a ridge either. So how do I do that? So this combined corner, but this is my right hand, I'm right-handed, I got it the combined corner with all the edges and the knots, it's on my right side. Now I'm gonna match up my little clusters as best I can. And then what we're gonna do is we're gonna start sewing in and out of the back loops. So you have a back loop. So the back loop are gonna be the loops that touch. The front loop is the, like, you have this little braid on top, right? Like, I think it looks like a braid. So you have the back loops are the ones touching. The front loops are the ones on the edge. We're only gonna touch the back loops. We don't touch the front loops, okay? So I'm gonna figure out, I like to take my needle and go across where I'm like, okay, so that's, those two should be together, those two should be together, those two should be together. Because they are the 3 stitches for this cluster, right? And you want to sew the stitches for each cluster together because that makes the clusters line up. So what I'm going to do is figure out, so my yarn is tied onto this gray cluster side, so I'm going to start on that side. I'm going to take my needle, I'm going to put it through this first loop, this first back loop, okay? And I'm going to go across so that I have both back loops on the same needle. And then you're just gonna pull it through. And this is what I mean by pulling through a bunch of yarn, okay? So now my thread is on the cream side. So that means we're gonna go back in on the cream side. You're going across. You're making a ladder, basically, across the opening, okay? So now we're on the cream side. We're gonna move 1 stitch over, gonna go in, and in on the bottom loop. So now you got 2 loops, 1 from each square. Go in, pull tight. Not like tight, but like pull it taut, you know? Now we're back on the white. We're gonna go through the next loop and the corresponding loop, and then we're gonna pull it. And now, if you look at it, if you pull them apart a little bit, you can see that it's starting to make like a ladder or a lattice or whatever you want to call it in the middle. That's good. That's what you want, because then you pull it tight and now they're just combined on that edge, okay? And here's what it's doing. You see on the bottom what it's doing? You just have a flat seam where these are just meeting up, and you aren't actually seeing the white being carried through. So that's what I mean by it being white and some of these being cream. You can't really tell because it's mostly hidden. The only times you really see it is at the corners, which I am going to show you how to do a corner of like connecting them. But okay, let's keep working our way through doing the stitch. Now I will tell you, you don't have to pull this all the way through on every stitch. I will do a few stitches. Let me do a few down. So like I've done a few and I just left them very loose. So now I can go back and I can pull it all through, and now they're all conjoined. So you don't have to pull it through every time. Also, it hurts my arm if I do that because it's a lot of pulling, but that's what we're doing. And that's all you have to do to connect these. It's very simple. It's a very simple stitch. It's not complicated. It's very straightforward, and it gives you a good result without you needing to know some like fancy shenanigans to try to like hide your yarn or do whatever. And this is also, at least in my experience, sturdy. This is how I connected the squares for those heart-shaped bags that I made out of the same yarn. This is how I connected the squares, and I've used those bags and put weight in those bags. And I haven't had a problem with like them coming unraveled or like coming unconnected from each other or anything like that. I think this is a nice stitch, and I think it works well. Now when you're pulling through, sometimes it can start to bunch up the square because it's just getting too tight. Just make sure you're pulling on it a little bit to make sure it's staying at like where it needs to be, as opposed to like if you pull it too tight, you see how it's bunching? You don't want it to bunch because that'll mess up how like nice and square these are. And we went through so many days of blocking these damn squares, so they better be square, you know? Okay, so now I'm like right at the end of these two squares. I've combined these. This is what it looks like. You see how nice and clean, and like this is a smooth joint, it's not raised. And I like the look of that. I think it looks very nice. Okay, so now we're at the end here. We need to make this corner combine. And I've done the stitches for the cluster, right? So then the corner, you theoretically have 3 chains. So you're gonna treat this chain like a stitch, where they still have a front loop and they still have a back loop. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go through the first chain, just like normal, just like it has a front loop and a back loop, and I'm gonna pull through. Then I'm gonna go into the second chain and do the same thing, front loop and back loop. So now I'm at the exact peak of this corner, right? Now this is where I'm gonna stop, and I'm gonna add in the next 2 squares. Now, this is where you need to set your stuff down. Make sure that you are adding them in the right order and the right place, okay? Make sure. Because of course you can always undo it and fix it, but I don't want to go through that work, okay? So I lay my squares out and I set them next to each other, and I double check my picture, and I'm like, these are supposed to be next to each other, okay? So once we double check, we look at our pictures, we figure out that these are supposed to go this way on top, okay? You got 2 of them. They go side by side. They go like this, okay? Now, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna spin these again. First of all, we're gonna put them back to back. Right side's out, wrong side's in, back to back, okay? I'm gonna spin them around again so that these ending pieces are at the same corner again. And we're gonna tie them together. Now, you're gonna put them back flat. And this is what we're gonna do. Pick up your needle. Pick up the ones that you've sewn together that are ready to combine. And now this combined corner that I just made is the corner that I'm about to connect them to like this. Okay? We're gonna connect all 4 of them at this corner. So I'm just gonna, again, we're gonna weave these ends later, because they look weird if you try to weave them in doing the mattress stitch. I tried. I promise you I tried. I could see them. It was so annoying. Anyway. Okay, so our yarn is on the cream side. So that means we're gonna go in on the same side. We're not gonna go in on this side, we're gonna go in on this side, because this is where my yarn ended. What I'm gonna do for my first round, because I'm gonna go around these twice, I'm gonna find the hole. So here's one hole where the corner is. Go in the corner hole. Go in the corner hole, the second one. And I'm gonna pull my yarn through. Then I'm gonna pull it through so that they're side by side. Then I'm gonna take my needle and I'm gonna run it through again the 2 back loops of the first 2. So that's our first round around all 4 of these, okay? Now, for the second round, I'm not going to go into the hole. I'm going to go into the actual stitches that are here. These, they don't have to be like front or back loops necessarily. I just kind of, they're scrunched up together because of the knot. I just kind of shove my needle through because you just want to get it through the yarn on both sides, basically. Pull it. And then I'm going to shove it through the yarn on this side one last time. You want to make sure in all of this that you're going through both squares every time you're going through. Because that's where we're getting the structure from, is it doesn't need to just be connected to one. It needs to be connected to all of them. So now, they're connected. And then we just continue along our happy way down the next row. So these match up. Now you do remember that you have the 2 chains to contend with on this side of these 2 new ones that you just added. So make sure you're just going across, in and out, doing the 2 chains like you're supposed to. As in counting the 2 chains as 2 stitches that you need to go through when you're sewing. And then we're just gonna sew it up. See? It's real easy. Make sure that as you're sewing, your clusters are joined together and they're not getting off or anything. Because you want to try to make it look like the tops meet the tops of like all the clusters, that they're like, it helps make the squares look like they're all the same size, even though we know that they're not all the same size. And we just block them to hopefully make them seemingly the same size, you know. They're still a little off, to be very real with you, but it's okay. We're gonna fix up most of that doing this stitch. And so now I do want you to pay attention. So far all my stitches are matching up, but if I have 2 squares where the stitches don't match up, like say on one color I had to do no chains in between each cluster, and then for the square that I'm connecting it to, I did do a chain in between each cluster, that means I have an extra stitch, right? Just skip it. Don't try to like add it in or make new stitches. The only stitches that matter are the ones really connecting the clusters together. Just make the clusters connect, skip the extra stitches. You're not going to see them. Just skip right over them. Those aren't what matter, and those aren't really the structural ones anyway. The structural ones are the cluster ones, you know? So just pretend like they're not there. Keep going. It's not gonna make a difference. And then especially from a distance, can't nobody fucking tell. Trust and believe. So, okay, I am going to finish sewing this up and I'll meet y'all back here. Okay, so I'm back at the end. I'm ready for the next square. And this is what the seam looks like. Nice and smooth. And then what I'm doing is I'm going to connect all of them. It's actually this way. I'm going to connect all of them in a straight line. And then we're going to come back and we're going to go across and do this horizontal connection. So that's how you connect them from scratch. So it's not really different to connect them once you have rows going, but I will at least show you what I'm doing on that, because maybe that's confusing. I'm not entirely sure. So I have this monstrosity, which looks much more confusing than it is. Okay, so this is 4 rows that I have connected together. And this is what it starts to look like. They're in their rows, but they have holes in them because I haven't done the horizontal rows, okay? Because I'm doing all vertical and then all horizontal. So this is our bottom right corner as it goes across, right? So the next one I'm doing connects right here. And that is this square. Now, notice that this one does not have, see how it doesn't have an end on there? Because I made the end right here, right? So, because this doesn't have an end on it, I'm going to spin this to where it also doesn't have an end. Where do I want to spin this to? I don't want that one. We'll do it there. Like, you don't, again, okay. You don't have to do this. You can put the end wherever you want it to. This is just for me. I like tying ends together and then weaving in because I think it's more structurally stable. You have more knots. It's less likely to pull out, right? So because this isn't an end and this isn't an end, this is how we're doing it. And this doesn't have an end either. So that means when I connect my next square in the next row, I'm going to spin it so that the ends connect, right? That's just how I do it. You can spin these however you want. You can have all your ends not knotted together at all because some people hate putting knots in their project. Your prerogative. It will make the same blanket no matter what you do. Okay, now I'm getting a new piece of yarn because this is a completely different section of the blanket, and then put it through the two corners. And then pull it to the end. And we're still gonna make an end and tie a knot because that's how I always start my strings. So I always tie a knot because I am worried that they will just pull themselves out or undo themselves or anything like that. Okay. Then we're just gonna sew it up like normal. Just like we were. We're just gonna go in and out of all the front and back loops. Okay, as it turns out, this is one of those examples of where I'm gonna need to skip a stitch. So this works out well. So I've connected these two right here, right? So the next one for this blue is a cluster, right? If you look on this one, there's actually another stitch before it starts the cluster. Now, because of that, all we're gonna do, oh my god. All we're gonna do is we're just gonna skip that extra stitch. We don't need her. We don't. So, I'm not gonna go in this stitch right here. I'm not gonna go in that. I'm gonna go in the next one so that she matches up. Because all we care about is the clusters. We don't care about the in-betweens. So this is the first cluster. First cluster. And so then we go through and do the next two cluster stitches. So we skipped a stitch. But it still looks flat, you know? Hold tight. But it still works, right? I will say, it gave me this little thing. This little piece of white. I don't care enough to go back and try to hide that. It's fine. It's whatever. Don't worry about her. Just, it's a nice seam. Look at it from back here. Nothing. So that's all I do. I just skip it. Hi. I know I said I would come back when I was still sewing it. Kind of finished it. Also, it's been like a week to 2 weeks since I sewed it. Well, since that video. It's okay. The main thing is I finished it. Do you want to see it? So, I'm gonna zoom out. But I did do a single crochet border and then a double crochet on top to try to give it like, I would pick up the one place I didn't fucking put that end away. There, now it's gone. Okay, so I did do that. And I'm also gonna do, I'll put in some clips of it like out on the floor so that you can like actually see how it looks together, all together. But it's large, let me tell you, which is what I wanted because I didn't want it to just be like a throw blanket. I wanted it to be like a blanket, you know? I am really happy with it. I will say it's not a straight rectangle. The edges are kind of like, and some of that is probably because the yarn is still tight because I haven't like blocked it, which how do you block a blanket really other than just like using it and letting it stretch out. So that does irk me. I also think some of that might be, I did block the individual squares, but there was still like slight differences between like, you know, some squares needed to have a chain in between each cluster. Some squares didn't. Some squares needed extra clusters or like whatever the fuck I had to do to make the yarn work, made them not exactly the same. And specifically the ones that did use a 5.5 hook just seemed like massively bigger than the ones that used a 5 hook. And I did stretch out the 5s to like the same size on my pegboard, but you could still tell that like the 5s were stretched and the 5.5s weren't really. But that's all just like close-up stuff. That's like if you're looking at it too far, too close. Because like from a distance, like it looks fine. You know, like it actually worked out really, really well. So I really like it. I do really like the Red Heart yarn. I do wish they would work out the kinks in it. Make it a little more, you know, consistent. I also wish they would come out with new colors. Because I feel like we've had these colors since the start. And like it's been a few months now. So now the hype's kind of died down on it. So now I'm like, it's spring. Don't you think it's time for spring colors? Like I just went to Joann's today because I was looking for velvet yarn because I'm going to start making scrunchies. I have plans. But I was looking at velvet yarn and I saw where the Juicy Couture velvet yarn has come out with spring colors. And then I went and looked at this yarn, still the same colors. So I'm like, marketing, where are we at? Where are the spring colors? Like, we need to keep this relevant because this is good yarn, but you're gonna need to release new colors to keep it relevant. But also, this is the first blanket that I've ever finished. I'm proud of myself for finishing it. I have about 5 blankets. Actually, my first video on this channel was 5 blankets at once. None of those blankets are done. But I finished this one. This one's finished. And even the inside, the ends are out of it, right? Because it's the inside. Now, I will tell you that I weaved in about 20 of these squares. And mind you, this is like 170 something squares. I weaved in about 20 of them. And I was like, do they need to be woven in or do they need to be tied off and cut? And I did opt for the tie off and cut because god damn, I wanted this to be done. Okay. So basically if those ties come undone, I'm gonna then weave in that individual square. And we're just gonna go by that because do you know how many ends there are? And do you know how annoying and slow it is to weave it in? This is why I normally like weave as I go. But on this, when you're sewing the squares together, you can't really weave as you go. So that's just that, you know, it hasn't broken so far. It's been woven together for exactly a day. But it hasn't broken so far. So overall, I really like it. I also do want to say this shit's warm, like weirdly warm. There are holes in it everywhere, but like I'm hot right now. It's also hot outside. Hate that. Weirdly warm. I was expecting like a crochet blanket with like holes like this to be like very breezy and therefore like cool. Weirdly warm. It may just be that it's the red heart yarn is warm, but kind of surprised by that. Not mad about it, but do now wish I finished it at the end of fall as opposed to the end of winter, because where I live gets 100 degrees outside. Not right now, but it will soon. It's in the 80s right now. Hate that. But shocking success on this blanket. Not really shocking. I'm mostly just shocked that I finished it. And now I have a blanket that I can use as decoration and as actual blankie. So now you're gonna ask me, am I gonna work on my 5 blankets as my next thing? No. No, I'm not. I really can't be bothered. Do I want to finish them? Yes. Can I sit through making another blanket immediately after making one blanket? No. I'm looking into scrunchies, like I said earlier. I'm working on some scrunchies. Not just normal ones. I want to make some jumbo scrunchies. And also some scrunchies with ribbons that hang down that are like crocheted ribbons. I'm working on a beanie for my husband that I use 3-weight yarn for, so it's taking exactly 50 years to finish, but that'll be a video that's coming out. I also have a tapestry crochet pattern that I think is very fun that I'm going to be doing hopefully sometime soon, because I really want to start getting into tapestry crochet, especially tapestry crocheting like dumb things, like things that make me laugh. So those are the current projects. Also, I still have a bag full of this red heart yarn. I want to make some more bags with it. I want to do some of those red heart patterns that I did in my last video, but currently I'm tired of feeling this yarn. Like, you know, if you use yarn too much, you get tired of the feeling of it. So right now I'm working with velvet yarn, and it's a nice change from the like, the only word I can think of is crispy. That's not a good description of like red heart yarn. It's just like, I guess scratchy. Like, I wouldn't make this into a sweater. As a blanket, it's okay, but like, I don't want this on my like boob skin. But that's what you have to look forward to coming to the channel. I guess I'll see you guys in the next one. I don't exactly know what it'll be. Hopefully it's finishing my husband's hat. Hopefully, but it really may be scrunchies, because I'm kind of excited about making scrunchies at the moment for whatever reason. So I will see you guys in the next one. Bye.